Welcome to the Natural Health 365 podcast. Natural solutions for everyday problems. Are you looking for natural health solutions? Visit naturalhealth365.com for a free subscription to our newsletter, free shows, plus some great gifts. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Landsman.
All right, thank you for joining us. Our show today, Going Beyond Organic, Growing Food for Maximum Nutrition and Taste. Our foods have been under attack by the biotech industry and its chemical products for decades, and the negative effects are clear for us to see. Simply put, many of our food crops have dramatically lost their nutritional value. Some agricultural experts would say by as much as 70%. This alone might be the single most important reason why supplements have been in such demand over the last many years. Even organic foods have lost their nutritional content, which is why so many people tend to struggle with nutritional deficiencies even when doing the best to eat well. Bottom line, we must find ways to get more nutrition from our foods to protect our health or pay the unwanted consequences of sickness and premature death. Today on the Natural Health 365 podcast, I'll introduce you to someone that has a solution for this problem. You'll learn about a system of growing plants that can produce nutrient-rich foods to help our daily needs. Before we meet our special guests, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Live On Labs, makers of the highest quality nutritional supplements on the market. The difference is in the delivery system. To learn more, visit liveonlabs.com. That's LIVONLABS.com. And now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Jana Bogues to our show. Dr. Bogues, welcome.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. Dr. Bogues, what is so unique and significant about your work for people interested in health and nutrition?
Well, Jonathan, people that have been around the health and nutrition world have been hearing for years that our soils are depleted of nutrients, and therefore the quality of our foods is just not what it could be or should be or what it once was. And even certified organic foods have little more nutrient content than those conventionally raised. And there's hundreds of scientific studies that have come out showing the comparison between the organically grown and the conventionally grown foods. And it's surprising and sad that the organic foods have very little more nutrition than those conventionally raised. Now, yes, they do have less chemicals, and that's a great thing. But it comes down to our health, and holistic doctors realize this problem. They test their patients, and they almost always find some nutritional deficiencies. And then they simply turn to nutritional supplements to try to fill the gaps. I mean, yes, they'll say, oh, yeah, eat these kinds of foods or something, more rich in nutrition like kale. But what I'm doing is, as a nutritionist, I was a nutritionist first and was working in the field and then came to realize how our foods had lost so much nutrient density. And there were these studies that showed comparing nutrient density from back in the 1930s and 40s all the way up till the present day, and how much we had lost up to like 70% of some of the key nutrients from our foods. And so when I realized that, I said, I'm going to have to go back to the soil, figure out how to fix the soil so we can have excellent quality foods that can give us the nutrition that we need. So that's what I did. I went back and I got a PhD in horticulture and food science. Plus, I worked with people all around the world, anyone that was doing anything with trying to improve nutrient density in foods from the soil up. So I've created this system now where we can restore the food nutrient density and have these really wonderful foods that can give us the nutrition that we need in a natural way.
It's so tricky, isn't it? I mean, sometimes people say, well, I can get all the nutrition I need from food, but when I say tricky, it's such a difficult thing to explain to people who suffer from illnesses when there's chronic mental, emotional, and even physical stress for that matter, and there's toxins, environmental toxins that they're either knowing that they're being exposed to or perhaps not even knowing that they're being exposed to, that without a chance of having the right amount of nutrition in your body as a way of trying to neutralize these toxins, That's where I think a lot of people are running into problems. It's this balance between how much are you being exposed to that's hurting you versus do you have enough in your body to nourish you and to create that buffer and that neutralizing effect from all these poisons that we're surrounded with. I mean, we're surrounded with it so much more these days, no?
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. There's so many stressors, and some of them we just really can't hardly do anything about. And it's just the air that we breathe. And yes, we can try to move to a cleaner area, but even that, it's a worldwide problem now. With the glyphosate, which is the herbicide Roundup, basically has gotten in the air and it rains down across everywhere. And there's been studies on organic crops that have these residues. And so that's why I said there's less toxin in the organic crops, which is great. And so we try to do the best we can. If we give the plants everything that they need in the soil so they can produce to their maximum capacity, they can then produce all these different phytonutrients. There's thousands of these phytochemicals that plants naturally produce. And these often have very beneficial effects for us. So if we can give those plants what they need, then they can provide us with what we need to help protect ourselves.
You know, I know that you're consulting with farmers and gardeners. Has that been going on for a while? How did you get into that? Talk to us about it.
Yes, absolutely. I've been doing that work for about a decade, working with farmers and gardeners, helping them to improve their soil. So it just came out, like I said, I was a nutritionist, and then I became a horticulturalist because I said we need to go beyond just saying, oh, yeah, eat your leafy greens. We need to grow those leafy greens the best way possible. Get that soil balanced optimally so that the plants can uptake all these nutrients that they need in basically optimal amounts. And what is so important, and people really don't seem to understand this, but the utilization of those nutrients is key in our bodies. And you can actually have a plant that has a certain amount of, let's just say, calcium, and another plant that is grown similarly or maybe even organically versus conventionally. And each of those plants is going to have a certain amount of calcium. But the plant that came from the soil that was balanced will have that calcium in a form that the human body will be able to absorb and utilize better. So there have been studies that show this, that even though there can be some calcium like in that conventionally grown food, and we uptake that into, past the digestive tract into the blood system, even at that point, it doesn't necessarily go into the tissue where we want it and can really utilize it to build our bones and our teeth and such. But it can be lost to a large degree in the urine before it ever gets properly utilized. But if that food is grown very well and has all the other accessory nutrients that go with that, it can create all these phytonutrients that are so important for us, then our body cells can actually utilize that calcium the way it's supposed to be utilized and actually build that strong bone and build the strong teeth and not have the calcium go into our soft tissues and cause problems like atherosclerosis or something. So this is a really key point that I think most people have no understanding of, and yet it's so important for our health.
Oh, yeah. What you just said is just amazing. I caught up on that one. I mean, not too long ago, they popularized this story about how they had these experts and they did these write-ups and mainstream media picks up the story, and they start spreading it throughout the U.S. that, well, there's not that much difference between organic and conventional. Now, of course, they're not even addressing the idea that in organic farming, like what you said, those practices use far less chemicals than conventional, but that wasn't even their point. Their point that they were playing up was, oh, the nutritional content of, say, a carrot or celery or tomato. Oh, it's all about the same. So here it is. You're spending so much more for organic food, and it's just no sense at all. Don't even bother to do it. But then none of them are looking at all at what you said, these studies actually showing that it matters the way you raise the food for sure, because when you eat that nutritional content, does it get into your body or not? There are big differences, right?
Yes, there are. And so like what I've done is what I call going beyond organic to nutrition grown. And that is really looking at getting the soil balanced with all these different minerals. So I do comprehensive soil analysis with like 18 different minerals instead of a lot of the soil analysis have far fewer minerals, and they really don't do a very good job, and they're not focused on increasing food nutrient content. Most of the soil analysis that come from like the Extension Service, they're just looking at sort of what are the averages in your area, and is your soil what they expected, or is it not? And I came from a completely different aspect, saying I want to have this soil to be able to produce maximum nutrition, and so I want ideal levels in the soil. And so it's getting a really good quality soil analysis because they're done very differently from lab to lab. And then also interpreting that soil analysis for increasing the nutrition in the food. That's a big difference there.
Okay, I want to get into it a little bit more in the middle part of this podcast now about the whole system that you have and how the food is produced and, you know, where a person can begin. All of these things we'll get into a little bit more. But first, I just want to thank our sponsor, Live On Labs, makers of the highest quality nutritional supplements on the market. The difference is in the delivery system. To learn more, visit liveonlabs.com. That's LIVONLABS.com. Okay, Dr. Bogues, just tell us more about Beyond Organic Nutrition Grown Foods, which is your brand, right? It's your trademark name, and how these foods actually get produced.
Yes. So like I was saying, I start with a very comprehensive soil analysis. I can get a really good picture of what's going on in that soil. And then we're going to put the organically approved type substances, various mineral products and microbials that are good for the soil and helping the plants uptake these nutrients. It's sort of like us taking probiotics. Well, we use those for the soil too. And because we're feeding those beneficial microbes in the soil, which in turn make the nutrients available to the plant. So we can also do nutritional foliar sprays, so giving those plants exactly what they need. I do test the leaf tissue of the plant, and we can see, okay, what are they still not getting from the soil that they need? Because it takes time to get your soil just right. So it's something that you test, and then you put things in, and you have to feed it sort of like a baby. You can't give it everything it wants at one time. You would overwhelm it. You would overwhelm the microbes in the soil. So you feed it, and it gets better and better over time. And so while we're doing that, we can also bolster our plant's health with these foliar sprays. So it's an organic type of a spray that we just spray directly on the plants. They can uptake those nutrients through their leaves, and we can have a very good crop even the first season. So I've seen even doubling of food nutrient density over the USDA nutrient database value. So that's what we have to have, some sort of database to compare to, and that's what we have. It's published by the USDA, Department of Agriculture, and has been since around 1930, 1940. That's where those studies came from. They looked and have continued to do their analysis on an ongoing basis. So we have this whole history of nutrient content. And so that's what I compare to and show how even in the first season of growing these vegetables the way they're supposed to be grown, we can double the nutrient content over the USDA values, which is exciting. And some of these items, there's so little of certain nutrients in the foods typically, the way they're typically grown, is that sometimes we'll have 10 times as much of certain nutrients in that food. It's just amazing when you actually treat the soil correctly, what it then can produce for us to eat. Absolutely amazing.
Okay, so I'm going to give you some time now, Dr. Bogues. I mean, this is important. People are listening. They have a little piece of property maybe around where they live, right? Some soil outside, a greenhouse. Maybe it's boxes they have to build. I mean, you know, if somebody really can't do it in the ground or something, I mean, talk about the different things that someone needs to get started with. Also, I'm thinking as you were speaking, What about the basics of like water? You talked about how rainwater could be polluted. And I know a lot of people that grow food and think of sustainable, renewable, practices, if you will, around their property want to capture rainwater. So maybe you could address some of these really basic things for people. I think it'll be very interesting.
Basically, you do need to, have a good spot to be able to garden where you get a lot of sun. You need at least 6 or 8 hours of sun for your vegetables to be able to get what they need. Now, different plants can thrive with different amounts of sun, and getting some guidebooks that will show you, what sort of to plant in your area too. Because here we're talking about people that live from south to north and all these, shorter growing seasons, longer growing seasons, etc. So getting some more, basic information about what you can grow in your area is where to start with that. But so yes, and decide whether you want to try to grow in the ground, try to do raised beds. You can get your soil wherever it is and improve that soil. Now, I don't really prefer these what they call aquaponic systems or hydroponic systems because they're very unnatural, and these plants weren't meant to grow in watery systems, and I've never really seen nutrient-dense produce come out of these watery systems. So, I do actually believe that the soil is very important and that we should keep the soil inorganic. There's some movement to certify like hydroponics as organic, and I'm thinking this is not where we're supposed to be going here. So, you can start with your garden bed and then take soil samples, find out what's going on there by having this comprehensive analysis, what you need to be able to put into that soil. And yes, as far as watering goes, rain, yes, it may have some contamination, but the water that's piped up through your community municipal water supplies can be contaminated also. And you may want to use like a water filter, especially if you have chlorinated water. Then you can get a hose filter and put that on so that you're not spraying that on your plants all the time when you're watering. But and I do water analysis also. So if you're concerned about the water that's going on your plants, we can analyze that and see if there's some issues there with that. And then once you get your crops up, you can have me do a leaf tissue analysis. I can tell you what you've got there, what you don't have there, what sort of nutritional foliar sprays we can spray on your crops to help them, sort of like giving them nutritional supplements to help them to perform their best. And then finally, we can look at the final food product. Let's just say it's the carrot or the beet that you're going to eat, and analyze that and look at it in comparison to USDA databases and look to see how much more you were able to increase the nutrient content. It's kind of an exciting thing. Of course, you don't have to do that, but it's fun to do that. And I have a course that I take people step by step through, and there's videos that show you, everything about what we're doing and how to do it and why we're doing it. And you actually get a soil analysis, and you can get the plant tissue analysis, and have me step you through it with one-on-one calls and support. And I have a group of Zoom calls where we get together, and so there's other growers on there, and we're all talking about this, and just trying to shift the whole consciousness around growing high-quality food. And I think so many people just don't even realize. They think that if a carrot grows, a carrot has what a carrot has, and that's it. And that's very far from the truth. So, like, as a nutritionist, that's what I was taught. Oh, you just look it up in the food nutrient database, and that's what it is. And that's absolutely not true. It can vary so much off of that, depending on how it was actually grown.
So you'll have to provide me with a link. I'm going to put it on the podcast page so people will have access to be able to get in touch with you. Is that okay with you?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I've got a website that they can go to. It's called beyondorganicconsulting.com, just like it sounds, beyondorganicconsulting.com. And you can take a look. I've got data there. You can look at some of these comparison studies. And I have my book, which is called Beyond Organic, Growing for Maximum Nutrition and Flavor. And it's available as a printed book and also as an ebook. It hit #1 on Amazon in 2 different categories. So it's out there, and you can get that information. Another thing that I just wanted to bring up that I think is just so interesting. When I did my dissertation research, I looked all the way from what we do to the soil, comparing crop cultivation systems, all the way to human blood. And as far as I know, there's no one else that's ever done that breadth of a study. Because most people, it's either like they're looking at the soil, or they're looking at the plant tissue itself, or they're looking, oh, this is human nutrition. But they haven't connected what we do to the soil all the way to humans and human blood. And what I did was I used apples as my model. I looked at apple orchards and took samples of soil and leaf tissue and the apples themselves, and then actually had people eat these apples, and I checked their blood glucose. And what was fascinating is that, and this is preliminary data, so this is, I just want you to understand that this is the cutting edge, and there's needing to be a lot more research done. But what we saw from preliminary data, and this was also something that I had heard about, that someone, a diabetic, had gone into his doctor's office and said, I can eat fruit that's grown really well and it doesn't spike my blood glucose. And when I heard that, I said, I've got to do this work in the university. And so I got funding and I did that. And what we saw was that even though the fruit could actually have more sugars in it, if it was grown well, it tastes better, and yet it did not spike the blood glucose. So it's huge what we, still have to discover about foods and growing them correctly, and how that it affects us and our physiology.
Just listening to what you're saying here, on some level, even though I don't have a PhD degree in horticulture or anything like this, it just seems to resonate with me. It makes sense that if things are in the best natural state possible, they would just simply harm the human body less. It just makes a lot of sense. I want to get into what people can do if they can't grow their own food. Can they buy this kind of quality food? And then I have a couple other questions at the end. But first, I just want to thank our sponsor one last time, Live On Labs, makers of the highest quality nutritional supplements on the market. The difference is in the delivery system. To learn more, visit liveonlabs.com. That's LIVONLABS.com. So, Dr. Bogues, that's amazing information, what you just said. Before I ask you about where people could go to maybe buy this high-quality food, do we have any kind of possible reason why blood sugar doesn't tend to spike in better-grown apples versus more the conventional ones? Is it the whole matrix of all the nutrients and how they're all balanced better in a better-grown apple? I mean, how do we figure that this happened to the person?
That's a very good question, and that was one that we were trying to understand better. Like I said, there needs to be a lot more research done. And what we more or less concluded, from the best we could from the data that we had, was that there were more phytonutrients in those well-grown apples that did not allow the blood glucose to spike, so that they modulated the blood glucose response.
So isn't that amazing? All those people with blood sugar problems, right? All the pre-diabetics, right? All the diabetics out there. Imagine if a conventionally trained physician would really get the light bulb moment in what you just said and simply pushed every person that they saw to get more phytonutrients, right? And obviously that would mean that they would have to push those people in the direction of eating more plant food, maybe getting away from boxed, bagged, or, canned foods, which obviously are heavily processed and most likely pretty fair to say when you say, Dr. Bogues, that a lot of those processed foods have very little phytonutrient content in them.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Yes, the highly processed foods have almost no nutrition, no phytonutrients. They're just really something you should not put in your body at all. And going back to your question about what if someone can't grow their own food, but they want to eat this high-quality food? Well, I'm working to get a group of farmers and gardeners and more people aware of this and growing in this way. So hopefully eventually you will be able to get these foods either, at your farmer's market and then, eventually in the grocery stores too, where you can actually just go down and buy nutrition-grown foods. But in the meantime, it's best really if you can grow at least some of your own food. It's not just for the food. It's actually getting out there, touching the soil, and having those microbes from the soil and the earth energies that transmit into your body. And it's just a beautiful way to live and how we're really meant to live. So when we distance ourselves from nature, our bodies just don't function the way that they were designed to. That being said, if you still cannot grow anything yourself, then look to a community garden and possibly try to, get involved with a community garden where you can go and either have your own plot or help out with others. There's things called CSAs, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And you can pay for a weekly subscription where you get a box of vegetables. And a lot of those CSAs allow you to come and work on the farm in exchange for your vegetables. So that's one way you can do it. You can also, if you know or can, meet up with an organic farmer from your neighborhood, maybe go to the local farmer's market and meet some of the growers and say, I found out about this really great way to grow food, and I was wondering if I could share this information with you and maybe give you a copy of this book and have you take a look at it, and then I would like to help work with you to get the soil optimized and growing this food better. And in that way, just working together, and this is community, and all of us working together to improve the health of everyone, because you're bringing something good to that farmer too, because that farmer is going to eat out of their own fields. And by sharing with them, you're helping them as well as helping yourself.
Dr. Bogues, great information. You have the book. I want you to repeat the name of the book. I would imagine a lot of information is in that book. We'll also have a link on Natural Health 365, the podcast page for Going Beyond Organic Food. On this show, we'll have a link to beyondorganicconsulting.com. But the name of your book, again, for people to go and pick up would be what?
It's Beyond Organic, Growing for Maximum Nutrition and Flavor. So, like I said, you can go to my website. You can find it there. It is on Amazon also. Like I said, it hit number 1 in a couple of categories on Amazon. So it's out there. You can get it.
No, it's great. Dr. Bogues, I'm personally looking forward to getting into growing so much more of my own food. It's a real personal passion of mine and interest. That's why I was just so keen in having you a part of the podcast that we do. And so I really do appreciate your time today. It's great information, and I think it's back to the basics. This is one of the most fundamental things that more and more people need to get right if they want to feel good all the years of their life. It's that simple.
Yes, absolutely. And you may have heard of the Blue Zones, and Dan Buettner, who did that research, and almost all of those centenarian people that were living to age 100 healthfully have gardens, and they get out and they garden. And it's just so important to get back in touch with the land and be out there in nature and growing your own food. It's the best way to be nourished. It's so fresh. You're picking it and eating it right then, and there's just nothing like it.
Dr. Bogues, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The show was brought to you by naturalhealth365.com. Are you looking for natural health solutions? Visit naturalhealth365.com for a free subscription to our newsletter, free shows, plus some great gifts. Thank you for listening, and be sure to join us next week for another great show.